something that should be injected into any discussion of this strike is that this should be and has been a technology-led export industry, and the industry is being systematically destroyed.
Chris Townsend is a longtime labor organizer. He was formerly I think the director of the organizing department for UE, United Electrical Workers Union. He's also been the director of organizing for the Amalgamated Transit Union. And now he is a prolific hawker of books.
And just like all around a good dude.
All around a good guy, absolutely.
Right? Just a good dude, and really appreciate all he does for the movement.
Absolutely. We are love the books that we've gotten from Brother Chris, and the work that he's done to get books back in print has been very, very important and beneficial for working folks. So,
absolutely.
Chris Townsend, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And on my bio, I was the political director for the United Electrical Workers and then the organizing director for ATU. I refer to myself as the jack of all trades and at least the master of several. So there.
There you go. There you go. Well, that's I appreciate that clarification. So, Chris, having been involved with the UE for so long, you are, and actually, being kind of relatively close, at least closer than us, to the strike in Pennsylvania. Talk to us about what the UE Wabtec strike. What's been going on there?
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for taking an interest in this. This is the largest industrial strike underway. Currently, it's been underway since June 22nd. This is the United Electrical Workers Union, two locals, Local 506 and Local 618. That's the production and salaried locals, both are on strike, at a company named Wabtec. It's the old Westinghouse air brake technologies. They souped up the name to Wabtec. And for probably 100 years, this was a General Electric company facility. And in 2019, anyone who follows the decline and fall of the General Electric company, the collapse of the company really due to corruption and wild speculation and 101 other outrageous corporate behaviors, all of which went uninvestigated and unprosecuted, I might say. But in the company's stage of collapse in 2018 and 2019, they sold their railroad locomotive production facility, one in Erie. They had already established a second in the South in Fort Worth, Texas. Low wage, no benefits, all the usual reasons why companies would do that. And they sold them to this company called Wabtec. And UE was forced into a strike at its first dealings with Wabtec in 2019. And now here we are at the end of that. That was eventually settled. And now here we are at the end of the contract that was settled as a result of the first strike. Now here we are in the midst of a multi-month strike now by the 1,400 workers who assemble locomotives and do some other products in that facility. So it's a tough strike. The issues are what you might expect, not in any particular order. Wages, of course. When you go through that kind of a corporate change out, you have to switch as a union from dealing with one conglomerate to another. Things lag, and the wage situation, of course, the inflation factor has kicked in since 2019. So wages are an issue. There's also an interesting, probably the unique thing about this strike compared to others, and why folks maybe would take a little interest in it, is that one of the demands of the union is to restore the right to strike over unresolved grievances, non-disciplinary grievances. And this existed under General Electric, and it was a large part of why the company pretty much minded its P's and Q's on a lot of things. GE was a monster and an anti-union monster, but that right to strike and the occasional exercise of that right to strike mid-term, mid-contract, legal right, written into the contract to resolve unresolved grievances. It kept the company honest. And of course, that was lost in the changeover and during that first strike. And of course, the record will now reflect that Wabtec just harasses people and harasses the union into multiple arbitrations. It's a financial punishment of the local. And so in any case, the labor relations of this corporation are in fact, in some ways, even worse than General Electric, if you can believe that. And workers took strike action on June 22nd, like I said. And then the last thing I'll say, just to encapsulate it, to abbreviate it, the issue here, guys, really is the railroad locomotive industry, which we wouldn't expect very many folks to understand, but it's a trustified industry. There's really only two significant builders of locomotives, so Wabtec, the former GE, and Caterpillar now through one of its subsidiaries, which is the former General Motors piece. And these companies are both anti-union. They've been both trying to systematically de-unionize their U.S. operations. And one of the things that UE, I'm very proud of, has gone after them, that when you get into the details, you get into the weeds of why aren't more new locomotives being produced, it's because the companies, the rail companies and the remanufacturers work the remanufacturing angle. Because if you remanufacture an old used, even a jalopy locomotive, you're not subject to any of the current, what they call Tier 4 emissions standards. So what that means really is if you want to remanufacture an old polluting locomotive and then still have it out there running around polluting beyond what a new locomotive would bring, there's no incentive or much less incentive to buy a new locomotive. So UE, to its credit, has raised this issue, as part of the climate change thing. And, the federal government is complicit in this and has been for multiple administrations going back decades. But the federal government has the ability, because of its tight regulation of the railroads, if it exercises that power, to move in this direction and force the railroads to do what they should do and could do, but won't do because they're not forced. So this is kind of an interesting strike with that right to strike over unresolved grievances as a key issue. Of course, the wages, like I mentioned. And then this press on the company to actually more seriously expand the work that it does in Erie on, I guess you could call them green locomotives. We're really talking about less emissions, so a less polluting type technology. But this is key. The pollution caused by these locomotives is significant. Anybody that's ever lived around a railroad yard or facility knows that. So in a nutshell, that's where we're at. We've been on strike since June 22nd. The members have held very, very tight, almost no scabs. Scabs have been brought in from outside. That's been a bit of a fiasco for the company and a public relations black eye. But and negotiations are ongoing to an extent. They start and stop. But this is not a case where negotiations have broken down completely, at least yet.
And how long has the strike been going on for?
Since June 22nd, well, about 2.5 months, I guess, or 2 months.
Yeah, almost 3, going on 3. If it's June, June 22nd, no, it's more like 2.5 months. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So the and why is the company saying that they won't? What is their rationale? Because theoretically, if they have the right to strike over, non-disciplinary issues, well, the way that you could avoid them striking over disciplinary issues is just follow the contract you agree to. Like, if you're willing to agree to a contract, why would you be so opposed to an enforcement mechanism?
Sure. Well, I think it's apparent, and this is not unique to Wabtec. These companies are pathologically anti-union. I use the word pathologically carefully because this is almost a medical defect in their minds. They have no respect for the workers. I mean that sincerely because this is an ideological understanding that they have, that their attorneys, their whole management, negotiating team. It's inconceivable to them that you would allow a worker to strike ever anywhere. I mean, they view us as serfs and vassals, really, in every way. They're rare to admit that, but that's kind of their notion. And then the notion that somehow the company would agree to a language in a collective bargaining agreement that under really certain very limited surgical situations that the workers would be able to resort to strike action. Well, that's for those fat cats, that's just unimaginable. And I commend UE for taking this on, because this ability to strike mid-contract over unresolved grievances was formerly, if you go back, you would have to go back 30, 50 years ago and later. But this was quite common in many industrial contracts and in many pattern agreements and whatnot. And it wasn't very frequently used. It didn't have to be, because in those situations where the boss was aware that it could face this, well, let's follow the contract and not start a war and all this. But absent that pressure, and we see this all across the labor movement, I think half the shows that you guys do, you have employers that have a union, they sign a contract and they violate it, they undermine it, and with impunity many times. So it's hard for the management to even conceive that the companies would prefer not to deal with any union at all, but if they're stuck dealing with them, they certainly don't want to agree to things like this. So this is a real battle royale, and that's part of why I volunteered to lend a hand, with the work. The strike is not getting the degree of publicity that it should command. That's probably because it's only in one city, in Erie. Erie's a little bit out of all the media markets, but it's also, we've had, in the last year, we've had the enormous railroad strikes, strike breaking by Biden, which is, 100,000 workers compared to 1,400 in Erie. We've had the UPS. You don't get any bigger than that. So now the writers' strike, the Screen Actors Guild. I think it's a bit overshadowed by all that other strike activity. But anybody that would want to examine what's going on in this strike, you just go to UE Local 506, put that in your search, and you'll find the local website, the National Union UE website. You'll find all the local reporting that's been going on, and you can pick up with it.
Yeah, I think it's just really remarkable to fight on those issues, to have those issues as part of a contract fight, because to have consequences for the employer is something we talk about all the time. It's something we were talking about with Boss Watch this morning, just all the things that employers will do if they can get away with it. And like you said, it's not something that even necessarily has to be used all the time, but if there's a credible threat of it, there's a credible threat of consequence, it can really help improve people's lives on the job. And the climate piece of that, I think, is really huge too. That's really cool to know, and I think that is yet again another area where the federal government could be doing more, should be doing more, in a way to help our environment and help workers at the same time.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Yeah, and well, the thing about strong enforcement provisions is that actually more often than not, they're not enforced because they don't have to be. If you actually have strong enforcement provisions, then what happens is people are more likely, companies are more likely to follow what they've agreed to follow the law. And, we saw that with Joy Silk, actually. We talked about the partial resurrection of the Joy Silk doctrine at the NLRB. And, a lot of people kind of in the labor media space were saying that, Joy Silk would bring about the institution of card check. And actually, that's not what we saw when Joy Silk was the standing doctrine at the NLRB. We saw that employers just didn't commit ULPs during elections, and workers were able to have actually something close to a free and fair election, as much as you can have as a worker in a capitalist society where your boss, signs your check and all of that kind of stuff and, all those inherent issues. But, they didn't break the law as much. You didn't have Joy Silk bargaining orders, typically. You just had fair elections.
Right.
Yeah, something I'll add, two things, I guess, to that point. The political support that UE has received has been good from certainly the bulk of the local politicians, not all, but some, and some of the state and national political leaders. But on the federal level, Senator Fetterman came up and walked the picket line. And Senator Casey hasn't been seen anywhere. Now, I bring that up because Senator Casey's the senior senator from Pennsylvania, and I worked with him 15 years ago. And his preferred style of operation and anything to do with these companies is to issue, kind of weak press releases, wring his hands, and hide. And while he would be listed as a friend and a supporter, what is he doing actively to pressure Wabtec? Senator Fetterman set a fine example. I met with him a month ago, I guess. I met with him over here, and he's ready. What do you need me to do? And what's perverse about this is that there's no industry more regulated than the railroad industry. Now, whether or not the government exercises that power that it has and influences these companies is another matter. And folks may realize that we've had an incredible development of near complete monopoly in the large railroads, what we call the Class 1s. They're the ones that primarily buy the new locomotives. Not too many years ago, there were several hundred Class 1 railroads. Sit down and hear this. Today, there are 4 in the entire country. And this tremendous amount of monopoly power, of course, this would have explained in part what gave rise to the strike that Biden had to break in the rail industry. You have 4 companies that dominate the entire United States. It's absurd. It's dangerous. And those companies make decisions that suit them and their shareholders and their management. They don't make decisions based on what serves the shippers of goods and materials on the rail. They certainly don't think about the railroad locomotive industry. And I guess something that should be injected into any discussion of this strike is that this should be and has been a export, a technology-led export industry. And while it still does provide some exports, the industry is being systematically destroyed, moved south, including to Mexico. Both of these corporations that market new large volumes of locomotives, which would be Caterpillar and Wabtec, both source a growing amount of their material from Mexico. GE, as I had mentioned, I think had built a mill in Fort Worth, non-union mill there. And it's all seeking the rock bottom wages, rock bottom regulation and anything. And the industry has now been wrecked in many ways, very atomized and wrecked. And now we find ourselves in this position today with, really worn out, polluting locomotives being rebuilt, put back again, rather than any sensible national rail plan. And you might think that some of the political leadership would look today and say, well, maybe this is time for us to electrify some of the rail lines and really begin to expand our rail lines, reconsider this bizarre attachment that we have to highway building and unlimited burning of fossil fuel. No, the railroads have been allowed to just drift into the hands of what is now the 4 enormous monopolies, and they make the decisions that suit them. And the political leadership kind of just sits and wonders, well, wow, that's too bad. We saw the catastrophe in Palestine, Pennsylvania, which is part of it. You guys have covered some of this. So this question of who's building the locomotives is part of that, and it has to be addressed. But it has to be addressed as part of a total review of what has happened or what has been allowed to happen in this very key industry that we have.
Right. Yeah, I so agree with that, and I mean I think it's one of the most important industries in the entire country. And something else that came to mind as you were talking is I just saw a statement from RWU talking about the Sierra Club and, you know, opportunities for them to work together, and a new report that Sierra Club put out about the rails that did include quite a few of the labor issues that RWU has been agitating around. And so, you know, I think that's promising. I think anytime there's more folks out here talking about this, because you know, to your point, it's like we're in the Gilded Age all over again in so many ways in this country, and you know, from the inequality of wealth to the inequality of class power, and yet again we have a railroad monopoly, which is so dominant in this country, and we have to fight back against it. And it's going to take a massive public movement to demand better. So
Right.
you know, and this strike is just kind of one piece of that puzzle, and ties in, you know, to this broader struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, one last comment, if I'm allowed. When I was the political director for UE, and I worked on this issue for so many years I can't count, and for year upon year upon year, United Electrical Workers, Local 506 and 618, we would go to the political leadership at all levels, from the White House on down, and we would bring ample evidence with us, documented evidence. We would say, if you don't act, if you don't do something swift, something significant, this industry of railroad locomotive production will be destroyed and offshored. And nothing that we predicted has not come true.
Right.
And it's only the inaction of too many of our lawmakers at federal, state, both, that has allowed these companies to run amok like this. And now here we are. When I joined UE, that mill in Erie had 5,000 union members in it. Today it has 1,400. I could go through chapter and verse. Everything that this union has predicted and shown to the political leadership has come true. So that's why I get a little annoyed, because I said, well, then what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for somebody to turn out the lights? Is that what should we invite the senator to come and turn out the lights after everything we said has come true? I think we have to act dramatically before that happens.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think that's exactly right. Chris Townsend, former political director for UE, former organizing director for the Amalgamated Transit Union, and current all-around good guy supporting working folks wherever he can. We really appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Appreciate
All
you,
right.
brother.
So while, while they are fighting for the right to strike over enforcement of their contract, I mean, and that's really
that is such a cool issue, I think, to be part of the fight, and such an important one. And I also applaud UE for taking this on, and I love to see, you know, when our unions are really taking a comprehensive look at these struggles,
right, and
not, because it's easy to get like really laser focused on just one or two issues, but they all connect. And you always got to be thinking about, you know, how are we, you know, addressing the balance of power in the workplace. And so, you know, that was really fascinating to learn about.
Absolutely, yeah, exciting to learn about, and looking forward to their victory.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one thing that you know, I want to find out more about in terms of you know, strike funds and what they need, what we can do to support. To, you know, I think it was great, you know, to have Chris on and talk about this, and we'll get that clip out there. But yeah, absolutely want to send our solidarity and love to those brothers and sisters out there. That's an important fight. And one that does connect to so many others.
Want to give a update really quick on the Wabtec strike from Pennsylvania, before we go into the interview, because we talked to Chris Townsend about it a couple of weeks ago, and so you may be wondering, hey, what happened with that? Well, Wabtec's updated 4-year contract proposal with UE Locals 506 and 618 includes additional, they came to a tentative agreement, and then the members ratified it. So Wabtec workers in Pennsylvania, in Erie, Pennsylvania, are back at work with a new contract. And the new contract includes a 3% bump after the first year, additional guaranteed annual pay increases, a lump sum payment of $1,500. Other highlights include promotion opportunities, an expanded employee vacation plan, Wabtec contributions to employees' health reimbursement arrangement, a 40-hour cap on employees using personal time for family and medical leave, and the right to strike after the union exhausts the grievance process or if subcontracting results in layoffs. The proposed agreement also includes Wabtec's right to employ subcontractors, though, for business reasons. The new contract would also establish, and this is kind of sketchy. It's going to be really important on the members to enforce this very closely, very narrowly, but the new contract would establish a continuous improvement committee comprised of management and bargaining unit employees. The committee will carry out manufacturing improvement initiatives at the Erie plant to increase productivity, streamline operations, reduce waste, and upgrade safety. Folks, those committees are usually bad news. You got to watch out for them. Wabtec has subcontracted manufacturing jobs to continue production at its Erie site during the strike, and the company ended that contract once the contract was ratified. The UE said about its ratification that the contract represents a substantial improvement over what Wabtec had on the table in June. Local 506 President Scott Slauson said, "We are proud of the resolve of membership over 70 days on the picket line. As a result of the action taken by our members, we made both economic and non-economic gains." So there's your update on that.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.